I'm Fox 4's Anvar Ruziev, and I was at the Polk County Sheriff's press conference on Monday, where more than 20 sheriffs across Florida showed up to talk about how they will be working with the federal government to deport undocumented immigrants. But what is that going to look like at a local level? I asked the sheriff those questions. The day that President Trump took office in January, he issued an executive order. Before this order, local law enforcement could detain undocumented individuals if ICE requested it. But officers themselves did not have immigration authority. Now, under this new order, deputies can initiate immigration holds themselves and even make arrests for immigration violations without waiting for ICE to step in, even for something as simple as a traffic stop.
If a person was to be pulled over for a traffic infraction and they have one of those immigration warrants, would they then be arrested and deported?
The short answer is yes.
To get one of those immigration warrants, a judge has to issue a final order of removal, meaning a person has already been through the immigration proceedings and was ordered to leave the country. But with more than 23 million people living in Florida with different nationalities, I asked,
and are there any steps that are going to be taken to help prevent racial profiling in those situations?
We don't racial profile.
According to the sheriffs, there are more than 1.4 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S. with active deportation warrants.
This whole thing is, they're going to be out there racial profile. No, that's noise. Show me where it's happening. Show me what the allegation is. We'll thoroughly investigate it. And if somebody did that, they'll be held accountable for it. I'm sure every sheriff up here feels the same way.
The ICE website states that officers will receive coursework on multicultural communication and avoidance of racial profiling. That will be part of their 4-week training program. After, officers will have to complete an additional refresher training program every 2 years. And as Florida law enforcement begins to implement these new immigration policies, we'll continue to monitor its impacts across our region. In Charlotte County, Anvar Ruziev, Fox 4.
Defiant immigration activists in Los Angeles are now trying all they can to stop ICE agents. They've been showing up to raids with megaphones and cameras, and now they're trying to dox agents across the Los Angeles area. These posters that you're looking at on your screen right now have been spotted in several neighborhoods. Now, they contain photos, names, and phone numbers of ICE agents, along with a message written in Spanish, which reads, "Careful with these faces." Now, a DHS spokesperson is telling Fox, quote, "These pathetic activists are putting targets on the backs of our law enforcement as they shield MS-13, Tren de Aragua, and other vicious gangs that traffic women and children, kidnap for ransom, and poison Americans with lethal drugs. These individuals will be held accountable for obstructing the law and justice." This shouldn't be controversial. Haley, an apt statement. It absolutely should not be controversial at all.
It shouldn't be. And where's Hakeem Jeffries? We just did a segment on him talking about traumatized federal workers because they got an email. What about these traumatized federal workers? You know who's traumatized? Any immigration official in this country. And it's not just what's happening here, these pictures. It's 2018 when AOC ran on abolishing ICE and said that these migrant detention facilities are concentration camps. Those were her words. You know what happened to Border Patrol? The whipping incident where Joe Biden said, "You will pay." These people were strapping migrants. It's outrageous. And then a 511-page report comes out and, oh, wait, they never did that, but the president demonized them. That's Border Patrol. And then you get to this. You think they feel safe? You think their wives feel safe? You think their children feel safe? Their pictures up? These are the traumatized federal workers. These guys deserve raises for protecting us.
And the reality is that all too often, the law permits certain wiggle room. And it takes a horrific event for there to be a law put in place to protect individuals. We saw across the pond, the state of New Jersey, for example, put in place an anti-doxing law for judges only after one horrifically had her spouse and child shot on her doorstep. So the point remains, Caroline, that currently federal law prohibits doxing only against covered persons, with an enhancement thanks to Congress 9 years ago for using the interstate system. But at the end of the day, that mostly ties them to court systems and criminal investigations. You can certainly make an argument that this is all tied to criminal investigations, but the reality is there's a wiggle room, a fine needle being utilized by, I won't refer to them as activists at all. They don't deserve that label whatsoever.
Oh, gosh, no.
But the danger is so paramount.
Absolutely. And a legal remedy is needed for these brave men and women that are putting themselves and their families in harm's way to simply enforce federal law. That's what they're doing. They're just going by the book. And, you know, these activists, of course, their outrage is tied to the ICE raids overall. And I think it's important to note that the only reason I think the media is able to demonize and humanize these ICE agents so much is because the raids have to be conducted in the streets because of sanctuary city policies. These progressive blue jurisdictions are refusing to cooperate with ICE. And so they're forced to do this in kind of a public spectacle way in the streets, whether it's New York City or Chicago, and they're allowed to make a circus of it, which is not, of course, what they're doing.
Will Congress pass legislation to make sure covered people will...
To the extent that it's possible. We were talking in the break about whether it is like Andy McCarthy thinks it might actually not pass constitutional muster if they try to do it. But they should try some. And again, these activists, I'm so glad you both focused on that, because whose benefit is it to put up these horrible posters? In the benefit of the cartel. They are, maybe call themselves activists, but they are essentially useful idiots for the cartels, for Tren de Aragua, for all of the mobs. It's like Al Capone putting up pictures of Elliot Ness all around because he's worried about getting arrested. It's the cartels that are benefiting from this most. It's not the activists, it's not civil rights activists or anything like that. It is the cartels. This is just helping the worst of the worst, which is exactly the kind of people that ICE is trying to get.
Right, and I would have to think that there'd be part of the law that would look at that as aiding and abetting.
Bingo.
And I'm not Emily.
Sounds
I
like
haven't
it.
done the closing argument on that.
Yeah.
But I do think that my understanding of the law is that there would be. And I would like to have that conversation. Let's just have that conversation because as Caroline mentioned, as we all agree, there's certain categories of people that you have to look out for. Law enforcement, ICE agents, judges. I live in Jersey, so I remember that case. You have to do it. I mean, they're stepping in the fold and protecting the rest of us, and they have
Hi, Bill. Well, this is one of the largest operations we have seen yet, with Border Czar Tom Homan telling Fox First that around 90 illegal migrants were arrested. These arrests happening in and around the Colony Ridge area. This is right outside of Houston. It's a largely Hispanic development. Officials say HSI, along with ERO officers and Texas DPS, targeted criminal and illegal migrants early Monday morning. Border Czar Tom Homan joined that operation. He tells me it was phase one of a larger criminal investigation and that a majority of those arrested were criminal migrants. Now, we're still waiting on a breakdown of just how many, but he says some already had warrants and were arrested at worksite operations. Others were captured on camera right here getting arrested during traffic stops conducted by DPS.
This is something a little different today. It's a larger criminal investigation into a network, and a lot of the people we're interested in were located. There were several.
And ICE just sent me this. Among those arrested, a three-time previously deported criminal illegal alien from El Salvador. ICE tells me he had a criminal arrest warrant for alleged repeated abuse of a minor. Now, Border Czar Tom Homan tells me that his priority right now going after those criminal illegal migrants, those who are a national security threat. But he said he's made this clear that if you are in the country illegally, you are not on.
Well, state and federal law enforcement are targeting the Colony Ridge subdivision for criminals and illegal immigrants.
Governor Greg Abbott posting on X that Texas DPS and special agents are helping with this operation. Fox 26's Jade Fleury is there live in Colony Ridge. Jade, what do you know?
Well, the operations happening here in Colony Ridge don't appear to be raids, but instead a heavy presence of law enforcement pulling people over and arresting them. And throughout the day today, we have seen those DPS troopers patrolling the area and making those arrests.
I'm just scared for my family.
The area once named a safe haven for immigrants, now being targeted by state and federal law enforcement. In a post on X, Governor Greg Abbott said the Houston suburb of Colony Ridge is now being targeted by an operation including DPS troopers, special agents, and Homeland Security.
It seems like they're just pulling people over and then escalating it from there. Just as we got here about an hour and a half ago, is we saw well over a dozen traffic stops happening along this main road.
Texas DPS troopers and unmarked vehicles were seen making those traffic stops and arresting people throughout the area. Residents who witnessed the arrests choosing not to be on camera out of fear for their families.
There were like police on the Family Dollar, and they were taking some people, and my mom, she got scared because she said like, we don't want like our family to just be like them.
They were just scared. They were crying. They didn't want us to come outside.
We got a video from one of our followers that showed that the people that were in the unmarked vehicle was HSI or ICE.
Colony Ridge has been at the center of recent controversy as reports called it a magnet for undocumented migrants. Some Republican lawmakers calling it America's largest immigrant community. Monday's operation instilling fear into those living in Colony Ridge.
We are scared for our families, not for us, but for our cousins, niece, mom, grandma, because my grandma, she lives here and she's not good with the papers.
Is you're going to see some of these areas start turning into ghost towns. And that is going to hurt not only the immigrant communities that live here, the business owners that live here, but the community at large.
And as of right now, it's unclear how many immigrants were picked up during today's operation. We did reach out to ICE, DPS, and HSI to get more information on these operations, but we're still waiting for their response. Reporting from Colony Ridge, Jade Fleury, Fox 26 News.